Good evening, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another edition of Talking Point. Now, this will be the final edition of Talking Point before, of course, as we enter the holy, blessed month of Ramadan. And after Ramadan, we will, of course, be returning back to the show to discuss current affairs, politics, and so many other topics. On Monday, which of course was the 20th of March, this past Monday, we saw the EFF national shutdown taking place. Now, what was a positive about this was that it was a peaceful protest and nothing in terms of damage of infrastructure had happened. Of course, there was a build-up, but a fear heading into the shutdown. Of course, what had happened, we saw net joints from government's perspective, of course, deploying certain security agencies across the country, but of course, no violence had happened, and I think that is one thing that needs to be credited to the party. But to discuss the shutdown, and of course look ahead to its 10th anniversary that is going to be happening later on this year, I'd like to welcome EFF member and Member of Parliament, Brother Nazir Paulson. Brother Nazir, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran so much for joining us.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and to the viewers, and shukran for inviting us. I'm looking forward to the interview. I'm looking forward to especially dispelling many of the myths that have been peddled around the EFF.
Now we're looking forward to the discussion also. Let's start, of course, with the shutdown, Brother Nazir. The party, of course, released a statement saying that it was a successful one. In what ways would you say it had some sort of success with regards to what had happened on Monday?
I think the first success was that the fact that we were able to mobilize so many people to participate in marches around the country, in Cape Town, in Pretoria, in eThekwini, in Johannesburg, in the Eastern Cape as well. So I think it was a great success, the fact that we were able to mobilize so many people, but more importantly, the fact that we were able to mobilize progressive forces to support the call for the national shutdown. I think we've clearly shown the divide between those who want a better South Africa, who are out to fight for justice for the poor working class people of this country, and those who want to have the status quo remain as it is. So I think that was the glaring reality that we have been faced with for a long time, is that there are those who want things to remain as usual. And then there are those of us who want progress, who want change, who want the lives of the poor and the working class to be advanced and improved.
Brother Nazir, order, of course, was something that heading into the shutdown, there was a lot of fear with regards to what may or may not have happened. From a party's perspective, and obviously the leader of the party, Mr. Julius Malema, had stressed that a peaceful protest was necessary with regards to this. So given how the top structure, how did they go ahead and make sure that there had to be a peaceful protest, even though there was quite a heavy security presence across the country?
Let me start by saying that, the history of Africans and South Africans in particular, we are a colonized nation. We were subjected to apartheid. And if one looks at by a minority force, so I can't see how people who were oppressed, people who were enslaved, people who were colonized can be considered violent. If we were violent, we would have opposed all of those evils. But yet, violent tendencies, violence of people who brought colonization, violence of people who brought apartheid. Those are the violent people. Violent people are the ones who are subjecting our people to poverty, to live in squalor side by side with sewage. That is violence. And I think people in this country have been peaceful for too long. We've been accepting this form of oppression for too long without responding violently. And I think the one thing that we do as the EFF is to contain that process that will bring about change and to direct it in a certain way with minimal loss of life, with minimal damage to public and private property. I think this is one of the things that the EFF does very well. If it wasn't for an EFF, there would be an unled revolution in this country.
Brother Nazir, please do carry on.
So I think this is the one important aspect about the presence of the EFF is that there is a led revolution. We cannot have an unled revolution. That would be chaos. That would be anarchy. That would be a civil war that would lead to bloodshed and destruction of state and private infrastructure. And we don't want that. We don't want loss of life. We are socialists. And above all, socialists value not just life, but the dignity of all lives.
Brother Nazir, the turnout, when I was driving, obviously past the north of Joburg, there wasn't much of burning tires or anything like. We saw maybe a lot of the leading up to the protest. Government, many would say being a bit proactive in the way they went ahead and mobilized security if things were going to go pear-shaped. But the turnout for the protest, I saw various news stations, especially in Pretoria, was quite large, where, of course, Mr. Julius Malema had led the protest there in the capital city. We saw Floyd Shivambu, he took protesters in Sandton, yourself with a number of the EFF leadership in the Western Cape. In large, it was a peaceful protest, but the turnout, how impressed was the EFF with regards to the turnout, seeing not just maybe members or card-carrying members of the EFF, but the public in general joining the protest?
Yeah. Yes, I think we are happy that we have seen that people are willing to participate in a protest, in a peaceful protest, and have accepted. And I think those that didn't participate, that stayed at home and went about their normal lives. Some didn't even go out of their homes on that day. Those are the ones that were fed the scare tactics peddled by the African National Congress-led government, and here in the Western Cape, the right-wing DA-led government. But I think people have seen that the EFF is a peaceful organization, and we have never had violent protests. We have never had violent marches. If one looks at violence, one must look at the DA. The DA marched on Luthuli House to go and provoke the ANC. We would never do something like that. Our marches, our events have always been peaceful with minimal incidents of violence and disruption. It is a myth that to associate black people, a predominantly black party, with violence, it is actually racist to expect a black-led political party to be a violent party. We are not the ones shouting racist things all over social media. It is members of the DA that's doing that. We cannot be associated with things like that. I wouldn't associate with anything that is violent and racist. I'm a Muslim. I've got to stand for truth and justice. And those people that have joined the EFF protest marches are people who share our goals of living for truth and justice for the people of this country.
Brother Nazir, we will continue the conversation after the break. I'm talking to EFF member and Member of Parliament Nazir Paulson, just discussing the national shutdown that happened on Monday. Do stay tuned. Welcome back to Talking Point. I'm in conversation with EFF member and Member of Parliament, Brother Nazir Paulson. Brother Nazir, You weren't the only organization, of course. The EFF had kickstarted and laid the roots for the national shutdown, but we saw various other organizations, SAF too, and we also saw the former MKMVA member, Mr. Carl Niehaus, join the protest. We saw Mr. Carl Niehaus standing right in front, of course, with the party's leader, Mr. Julius Malema. How important was it to have these other organizations being part of the national shutdown?
As I said, the ANC is a youth organization. They've got their allies in the Democratic Alliance and the Freedom Front Plus, and all those reactionary organizations. For the EFF to be successful in unseating the ANC, we will also need our alliances with progressive left organizations. So I think that is very important. And I think it spells the beginning of the end of ANC hegemony over South African politics and dictating South African politics. And I think after 30 years, almost 30 years, 3 decades, we can finally look forward to a post-ANC, post-apartheid South Africa, where the people shall govern.
And Brother Nazir, we will obviously be discussing that in the next segments that are going to come with regards to coalition politics. Brother Nazir, we saw videos of obviously on Sunday night, videos of a bit of skirmishes between some members and the police. There are still some members that were arrested, especially from the Gauteng branch of the EFF. It never went into something big. We did see, of course, the EFF calling on the police to release some of its members. First, I just want to get your take on what had happened with regards to the arrest. How far are they from being released from jail? And the second part of the question is making sure, from an organizational point of view, that there wasn't a full blown out chaos that would happen during the national shutdown.
Brother, we know our members, we know the nature of our members, we know the level of discipline, and when we've given a command and an instruction to members that our march, our protest action will be peaceful, there must be no damage to property, private or public, there must be no injuries and no loss of human life. If that is the instruction, our members are disciplined enough to follow that instruction. Now, what has been very apparent is that instead of addressing inequality in this country, the ANC wants to police the consequences of inequality. People are frustrated. We are the most unequal country in the world. People are frustrated. You have the extremely rich on the one hand, and then you have people living in squalor on the other hand. So it's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for unrest. It's a recipe for turmoil. Instead of addressing inequality, the ANC has shown that it wants to police away inequality. It has mobilized the defense force, police resources that appeared from nowhere, police resources that cannot keep us safe in our communities. We are subjected to crime, violence, gangsterism, drug dealing, all of the things can never be mobilized to fight those things, but it could be mobilized to go and suppress an imaginary violent uprising led by the EFF. This ANC has gone mad. This ANC is now in bed with the former apartheid government. You cannot have a party like that leading this country any longer. We cannot have a crazy bunch of ANC people who expect violence from black people to lead this country. We are far more than that.
Brother Nazir, there's two things I want to bring up. Load shedding, of course, one of the main reasons for the shutdown was to address the load shedding crisis that is currently happening. Dare I say, we haven't had load shedding for the last, 4 or 5 days? And driving across Johannesburg, I saw a number of police presence. And I thought to myself, but surely if this is the case, then can this not be done on a 24-hour basis to protect the citizens, especially when you look at the crime stats that's coming up? Is it coincidental that all of this has happened with the national shutdown happening? And if that's the case, why can't this be done on an everyday basis?
Exactly. Like I said, that the police are there. They are there to protect the wealthy in this country. They are not there for the poorer working class communities. They are not there to protect us. They are not there to protect us from being held hostage in our homes by gangs. The Minister of Police has arrested over 24,000 tires. He's arrested it. He's not arrested any drugs in that time. He's not arrested any drug dealers. He's not arrested any gangsters. Those people are free. Tires are more dangerous than gangs and drugs, it seems. I think there's something seriously wrong when you change your focus from real problems to a problem of a tire. It's sad. So I think it's given the citizens of this country an idea of the potential of this government to, number one, address our energy crisis, because for 3 days there was no load shedding in the lead up to the march. For 3 days there was heavy police presence everywhere that appeared from nowhere. We even had people coming out of retirement to assist the South African police. So why can't it always be like that? Why can't we have people where there are issues of crime and violence in our communities to go and address those issues in those communities? Cape Town, where I live, on the Cape Flats, 3,065 murders in 1 year, in 2019, since Cyril Ramaphosa took power. Nothing has been done to bring those people to book. Very few arrests have been made with regards to those murders of ordinary people, of citizens of this country. So I don't think that this government cares about the poor and the working class in this country. This government is more concerned. And here's what the police were out to protect. They were out to protect private property. They were not out to protect citizens of this country. They were out to protect private property. An imaginary threat to private property. There were no private property that was destroyed. Private property owned by rich white people and some fortunate black people. So I don't think we have a government that is serious about all the citizens of this country. And we have to accept that reality. And for me as a Muslim, when I speak justice, I don't speak a different level of justice for rich and another level of justice for poor. We all have the right to the same level of justice, the same level of protection, the same level of service, regardless of our social status. And any Muslim that feels differently, I don't know. We have to appeal to their conscience.
Brandazir, I have to get to the next question, and I agree with you on that with regards to there has to be, especially in a crime-ridden country that we're living, if what had happened obviously during this past few days is anything to go by, then there has to be security 24/7 and police 24/7 across all communities, rich and poor, but mainly, especially in the poor areas. Just in 2 minutes, Brother Nazir, part of obviously the shutdown was to have President Cyril Ramaphosa resigning. He has not resigned as yet, but of course there is the Pala Pala report. Remember, it's not a confirmed report from the public protector absolving him with regards to that. What next for the EFF? I know you're not the only political party that is, of course, pushing to have the motion of no confidence against him. What's the next step from a parliamentary, from a National Assembly perspective, obviously, to have the president answer questions with regards to what had happened at his farmstead?
Shukran so much. Yes, we are seeking legal opinion today on the 22nd of March 2023. There is a motion to call for the removal of the Speaker of the National Assembly. We feel she's failed in her duty to protect members. She's unleashed violence in that National Assembly on the State of the Nation address. We believe that she has shown clearly that her only role is not to protect members of parliament, but to protect the president. That is where the problem arises. And we will go to court to make sure that that report, the Pala Pala report, is given the due respect that it deserves. It cannot be that the report says that the president has crimes to answer for, and we say no, and it's fine. If they don't allow us to, we will just let it go. We are not that kind of political party. We don't allow a crime to go unpunished and unanswered. There will be a response. And that response will be, whether it is through the courts, whether it is through mass action, we will make sure that the president is held accountable. The president of a country must be beyond reproach. In other countries, when prime ministers and presidents become questionable, they themselves know that they must resign. Here in South Africa, they dig in their heels. We saw it with Jacob Zuma. We are now seeing it with Cyril Ramaphosa. And we need to send a clear message to the next president, whoever that may be. Never, ever, to number one, undermine the constitution of this country and think that you're above the law. We are all subjected to the same law equally. So we've got to send a clear message.
Brother Nazir, we'll be continuing this conversation after the break. For the next two segments, we discuss the EFF and its 10th anniversary happening this year. Do stay tuned. Welcome back to Talking Point. I'm in conversation with EFF Member of Parliament, Brother Nazir Paulson. Brother Nazir, let's talk the EFF. 10 years, its anniversary when the party started. Many political analysts, many former politicians said the party would not see past 5 years. How far has this party grown in the last decade?
1 million registered voters, brother. And I think, I think it's we have to attribute that to the many loyal and committed founding members who assembled at Shaft 17 on the 19th and 20th of July 2013. And then a week later at Uncle Tom's hall in Soweto to have the first National People's Assembly, and the amount of work that was done. The EFF was built on a solid foundation, a founding manifesto that can never be changed, a founding manifesto that speaks to the needs of our people, a constitution that fully encapsulates the justice that we seek for all the people of this country. So I think that in itself is the reason why people who join the EFF know why they are joining. We didn't join, none of us joined to be deployed to Parliament, to legislature, or the city of Cape Town, or whichever municipality. We joined because we believed in the vision that the EFF had or has for the people of South Africa and for this country. And I think that's what we need. A clear direction as to where we're heading, and a clear set of guidelines as to how we will achieve our aims and objectives in terms of being a political party. We are very clear. There's no dithering and straddling the lines when it comes to justice and injustice for the people of this country. And I think we had an opportunity to implement our first non-negotiable cardinal pillar when we gave the ANC our 6% in 2014 to change the constitution, to expropriate land without compensation, and they declined. And we've got 10% now, 10.79%, and we offered it to them again. But the ANC has been creative in once again betraying the people of this country and leaving the 85% of land in the hands of a minority.
Brother Nazir, I want to talk about your involvement within the party. Of course, you come from a student activist background during the times of apartheid. How did you get involved with the EFF, and what were some of the, obviously, the manifestos and some of the ideals of the EFF that attracted you to want to join the party?
Okay, so yeah, I didn't join the EFF first and foremost. I'm one of the founder members. So, when
no,
so when I got involved,
shukran for
there was
correcting me
no
on that. I
EFF
appreciate
at the
it.
time. So I was the first convener of the EFF in the Western Cape, or the convener at the time of the launch of the EFF. There was one before myself. He has left and formed another political party, but I was the convener at the time of the launch of the EFF. And I think it, and I remember going to Zwelishle, where we established the EFF in the Western Cape, and meeting with the commander-in-chief and the deputy president, and when they outlined the plan for the EFF and what it is we want to achieve. And I don't think anyone that hears the goals of the EFF and what they stand for could feel different from, or any rational person could feel differently. And coming from a poor working class background, it resonated well with me. I was very happy being a lecturer at a university where I lectured software engineering and project management, and I was very comfortable there. My family, we live comfortably, but I also know the struggle of students, and I also have my own struggle as coming from a poor working class background, and to speak about free, quality, decolonized education up until tertiary level. I think it is one of the good things. You invest in the people of this country. You don't ask them to pay for education. You invest in them by providing them education. That is how you build a country. That is how you build a nation. You are investing in people that will bring value. You'll be giving them the proper skills to build this country. We are a developmental state, and in a developmental state, you develop the skills of your people. This is how you take the country forward. You invest in the people, and that was one of the non-negotiable cardinal pillars that spoke or resonated with me and with many of us. And the abolishment of tenders and building a capacitated state that can deliver houses, hospitals, infrastructure that will build the capacity to deliver those things, as opposed to the current situation where both the national government and the one provincial government led by the DA are all about outsourcing and privatization of essential services. It's going to make it unaffordable for the vast majority of South Africans. Education is unaffordable. Tertiary education. I have a son who started university, and it's quite expensive, even for me. So I can imagine how difficult it is for others. I was very fortunate when I was young, when I started university in the 80s, that I was given a bursary. Otherwise, if it was up to my family to pay, I'm the son of a single working class mother. It would have been unaffordable for me to go to university.
Brother Nazir, before we go to the break, I want to talk about the EFF influence in various other communities. Of course, yourself being a Malay, we saw obviously Dr. Vauda was part of the party. I'm not so sure whether he is still, because I haven't heard about him in quite some time. Ms. Magdalene Munsami, she's of course practicing law. She was part of the EFF. We saw a number of, during a few protests, a number of white South Africans joining or being part of the EFF. There's a perception that the EFF does not appeal to other communities within our diverse organization. My question to you, Brother Nazir, is how important is it for the EFF to maybe, reach other communities like the Indian communities, white communities, colored, Malay, to show that it is a diverse organization for all South Africans?
Yeah. Shukran so much, and I think when we are all diverse. Even African people are diverse. A man from Limpopo, culturally, language, is very diverse from a Xhosa man in the Eastern Cape or a Zulu in KZN. So I think the diversity between a man from Venda compared to a person like myself from Cape Town is no different from the diversity of a man from Venda to a guy from the Eastern Cape or KZN. That diversity is there. I think what is important here, right, is number one, that the EFF embraces cultural diversity. Yes. And I think that's the only diversity that exists between me and everyone else, is cultural diversity. Our politics are the same. And that is politics based on justice and fairness and humanity, where we consider ourselves equal in every respect and embrace each other's diverse cultures. I've been to the traditional weddings of the president and the deputy president and other colleagues, and I've invited them to some of our cultural events. One of the it's probably not culture, but the tradition here in Cape Town is when we have the minstrels, the Nachtroepe, the Cape Malay Choir Board. I think that's one of the beautiful things that we have, and I think and I think that's the important thing, is being able to embrace that cultural diversity. And yes, Dr. Vauda is probably more Seswati than Indian. So I'm in contact with him all the time. Dr. Vauda loves the EFF. The EFF loves Dr. Vauda very much. But Dr. Vauda has made a decision that, his health is something that he's going to prioritize at this stage. We do miss him. We do miss him at our events. But as far as the diversity is concerned, and I think what has taken root now in the Cape, and it's danger for the right-wing parties like the DA, is that people are realizing, wait, this EFF is for everyone. You know, we are now growing in areas that we never thought possible. Our newest MPL in the Western Cape, Aisha Kasim,
Yes.
is 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 acknowledged for her hard work. And that's the only thing that counts in the EFF. In the EFF, we don't care whether you white or black or anything in between. What is important is being able to work to attain the goals and to grow the party. That is important.
Brother Nazir, I'm going
I,
to have to stop here.
we
We
are
have
more
to go to a
focused on
break.
the person
Yes.
than the cosmetics of the person.
Definitely. No, no, Brother Nazir, we have to end it there. We're going to wrap up the conversation after the break because I have to touch on coalition politics and the EFF's role in that come the national elections. Do stay tuned. Welcome back to Talking Point. We're wrapping up our conversation with EFF member Brother Nazir Paulson. Brother Nazir, with the few minutes that we have available to us, we need to talk coalition politics. We saw in various metros the EFF, of course, having an influence on, of course, what is happening on the respective metros, mainly Ekurhuleni, Johannesburg, and Tshwane. Let's talk coalition politics because they're looking at the current voter roll. If things remain the way they are, the ANC is on course to lose a majority of its power. How big is coalition politics going to become the 2024 national elections?
Yes. Voters have shown that there's no political party that they would trust completely to govern a metro. And it will happen at provincial level and it will happen at national level, that no party deserves the full trust of the electorate. So coalition politics is the future of this country. And I think, you know, there's no two political parties that's going to have exactly the same ideology, exactly the same constitution, and want to do the things exactly the same. But I think what is important here is that we must ensure, number one, that as far as when it comes to the EFF, there's a couple of things that we're going to have to agree with. And I think the more we agree with, the stronger the coalition will be with the EFF that party could have with the EFF. The first thing is we must believe that we are going to eradicate poverty, and we're going to take our people out of that indignified state that they find themselves in. And it's very simple. You know, when we say there's sewage running in the streets and our people are living side by side with sewage, and you've got to agree that we're going to focus on addressing those issues, whether it is infrastructure that we have to focus on. It solves another problem. We can then create jobs for our people. So what do we do? Number one, address the indignity. And by doing that, provide jobs for our people. When you provide jobs and you employ people, when people earn their own money, you are providing those people with dignity. When this government say that over 12 million people or however many million people receive grants and boast about it as if it's some sort of accomplishment, it's a disgrace. In 30 years, we couldn't provide people with real dignity, provide them with jobs that could have been either building houses, building infrastructure, creating other opportunities for people. It would have been more effective if we invested more money in job creation as opposed to providing grants. And I think it speaks to the monetary policy of the ANC. The monetary and fiscal policy of the ANC is to keep inflation low as opposed to creating jobs. And I think that is where we differ as the EFF and the ANC. We speak about job creation as a means to growing the economy. The ANC speaks about keeping inflation low. Keeping inflation low has kept our people unemployed. We need to provide our people with dignity. So when it comes to coalition, we've got to look at what do we think is more important? What are the priorities? And I think giving our people back their dignity is far more important than any other thing or any other aspect that we need to address. And I think, the other issue is we need to take a hard line on corruption. There's been so much corruption.
Yes.
The Zondo report. How many people have really been prosecuted? A hard line on corruption is not exposing corruption only. A hard line on corruption is actually punishing wrongdoers so that it deters anyone who wants to come after that and still be corrupt. We need to take a really hard line on corruption. I think a hard line on corruption, creating jobs, those are key to the future of coalition politics. Get our people out of poverty. That is very important. We need to eradicate poverty and do everything we can to eradicate poverty. And it starts by, number one, having competent leaders in government and in civil service, competent people who are able to do the job, not catered employees from the ANC or the D8 because they do the same thing, but have competent people who are capable of delivering, people who are not obsessed with, I'm going there, how much can I loot? Because that's all they do. We need to take a hard line on corruption.
Brother Nazir, one final question before we do wrap this up. Of course, the anniversary is one of the events that will kickstart the election campaign of the EFF. From now up until, obviously, the elections next year, in 2 minutes, what are some of the aims that the EFF will try and obviously achieve heading into those elections to garner the votes of South Africans?
There are 37 million eligible voters in this country. Only 18 million people have registered to vote. 10 million have voted for the ANC. Almost 2 million have voted for the EFF. The EFF has embarked on a campaign to make sure that every person eligible to vote is registered to vote. So we've got a target of 5 million people. 5 million people 5 million new registered voters. Because right now, currently, up until now, we've been targeting other parties' voters. We are now going to register our own voters. So between now and 2024, we are going to register our own voters. Between now and 2024, we are going to make sure that every EFF member contributes to the growth of this organization and the ultimate victory in 2024. Our 10th anniversary celebration, it is a milestone, the third biggest political party and amongst the youngest of the political parties. There are parties older than us that still don't have a seat in the National Assembly and that have lost seats in the National Assembly. It is a normal thing that any new political party does very well in the first election, and after that they decline. The likes of COPE, the UDM, done very well, lost seats. The EFF has grown from its initial 25 seats in the National Assembly to 44, and over 1,000 public representatives. Our growth has been consistent, but we will register our biggest growth come 2024. We have the advantage of hindsight. We know what works and what doesn't work. We've been through a lot of pains. We've had a lot of aches. We've had to iron out a lot of problems. I think we are the most competent of all parties in that National Assembly to actually lead this country. We have the most competent MPs. We have hardworking MPs. We have loyal and committed MPs. And not loyal to the party alone, but loyal to the people of this country. And I think that is very important. You will never hear about an EFF member involved in corruption. Because if that happens, the party will be the first to take a position. We may even be the first to go and lay a charge at the police station against any of our own members, regardless as to what level they occupy in the organization. We will take action. We take a really hard line on corruption. We expel people who are corrupt. We expel people who take money from ordinary people. We don't tolerate corruption.
Brother
And it's
Nazir,
the only party that doesn't tolerate corruption in this country, because everyone else is very selective as to when they are tolerant and when they are intolerant of corruption.
Brother Nazir, time is always against us. I wish we had more time to speak about so many other issues. We'd like to say shukran to you for joining us. And from myself and the rest of the team here at Hilaal TV, we'd like to wish you Ramadan Mubarak and may you have a blessed month.
Afwan, and shukran to you and to the viewers. Ramadan Kareem. May we have a blessed month of Ramadan. May Allah spare us, and may we all see Eid al-Fitr in good health and prosperity. Shukran so much.
Inshallah, I mean to that too, Brother Nazir. Jazakallah for joining us here on Hilaal TV. We really appreciate it. And we hope to speak to you and some of the EFF members soon ahead of that birthday celebration happening in July and leading up, of course, to the elections.
Inshallah. Shukran so much.
I mean, that is Brother Nazir Paulson from the EFF. He's a member of the party and, of course, a member of Parliament. Well, that's all we have for you here on Talking Point. We do, of course, head into the blessed and holy month of Ramadan, and the programming will be stopped, but you will see us again, inshallah, next after Ramadan, of course, when we do resume the show for more current affairs and politics and so many other topics. So from myself, Faraz Patel, the rest of the team, we'd like to wish you Ramadan Mubarak, and we'll see you again after the blessed month. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.